Commissioners, before we get into the agenda, and if it would be, if we could have a motion towards this, we have talked with Christian, and we have a representative from the Seven County Infrastructure Coalition here that would like to give an update, if that's okay.
I'll make the motion. We make him first on the agenda. Mike.
I'll second that.
Commissioners, will you all make sure your mics are on? You're sounding awfully quiet, and sometimes it's just a matter of talking closer to them.
My mic is on.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Not very well.
I'll speak up.
How about me? Can you hear me okay? Just don't ask us to sing.
Can we?
I don't. You don't sound very loud. Nobody sounds very loud, and I know
The
sitting
volume
back
on the-
there, every meeting I hear a complaint that nobody can hear us in the audience. So they may be on, but
There
you're
we
not
go.
projecting.
Oh, it looks like the commission mics are all the way up. We'll have to make sure we're talking louder. Mine's still not loud? Okay, I'll talk really close to the mic. And if we've taken care of that part of the business, we have a motion on the floor.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mike, would you like to take a moment and give us an update from the Seven County?
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate being able to be here, and thank you for the invitation to be able to take a minute. As was mentioned, I'm the Executive Director. My name is Mike McKee, but I'm the Executive Director of the Seven County Infrastructure Coalition, and appreciate the opportunity to just tell a little bit about who we are, what we do, and of course, Carbon County is part of the Seven County Infrastructure Coalition. Real quickly, the 7 counties that are part of the coalition's Daggett, Uinta, Duchesne, Carbon, Emery, San Juan, and Sevier counties. And so it's pretty much all of eastern Utah, a little bit of central, with the exception of Grand County. And maybe one day they'll want to join as well. We understand there might be a county too that's trying to get in as well. But anyway, the bottom line is when the organization was formed a few years ago, we are much like a county. A county is a political subdivision of the state of Utah. The Seven County Coalition is set up essentially the same way. So we're recognized by the state of Utah in that very same way. Part of the reason that the organization was set up was to be able to do things that we would otherwise not be able to do. If you're trying to do a large project, let's just say you wanted to build a railroad or a large pipeline or some kind of thing as a county, if you had to go bond for it and all those kind of things, your citizens are going to say, "What are you doing, putting this debt on us? We don't, why are you even considering that?" And yet, as a Seven County coalition, it's structured very different. It's done in such a way that we can take on projects, we can do some things that a county would not do, or the state of Utah a lot of times wouldn't. And so we're just structured in a different way. The other thing is rural Utah is losing its voice as the state continues to grow, and it's growing at a rapid pace. And so really kind of out in the Wasatch Front, and every time we redistrict, there's more power, more voice given there, and rural Utah is kind of losing that voice a little bit. And so as we band together, and these 7 counties, really our issues are all pretty close, similar, and to be able to band together and to be able to talk about certain things that would be valuable as rural Utah, that helps us a lot. I'll just mention just real quickly some of the projects. We've got a lot of them. I don't want to take very much of your time, but there's quite a few projects. One of the ones that Carbon County was involved in was the Carbon and Duchesne County pipeline. Ultimately, that was became a 7-county project, but that project is I think going to now in KC with your leadership and your commissioners, your other 2 commissioners' leadership, I think going to be utilized in such a way that that pipeline will be able to be built and used, and some things that way in relationship to that pipeline. There's certainly a railroad out in the Uinta Basin that's being contemplated as well. Some strong study money for that. There's things, here again in this county here relating to even the inland port, and there's some study money that we'd like to get to help with that with the inland port. Research on carbon to fuels. Also there's just a lot of different projects that way. Up in Daggett County, we were able to, we're just completing a trails management deal there that we were able to get $200,000 for. That's being completed. And anyway, as we move along on these projects, we've been able to acquire various assets. I think we're able to just do a lot of different things. I won't take time on all these different projects, but there's some significant projects that the idea of this is just to make our communities a better place, a way to be able to maybe facilitate, incubate, and to be able to do some things that maybe otherwise would not be able to happen. And Carbon County is a very important part of the 7-County Coalition. In fact, it's considered the hub and the center, and in fact the meetings are all most all are held right here, and we appreciate the leadership that has come in the past and currently coming out of Carbon County in relationship to the coalition. So I know I didn't take, I mean, I don't want to take very much of your meeting, but if there's specific questions, I'd be happy to talk about any of those or anything, but we wanted to let your public know that we're here and we're active and we're involved in a lot of things.
Well, we appreciate you making the drive. As you noted, there's tremendous value in our counties uniting as one voice. One example, as you kind of pointed out, was in Daggett County. They're getting a broadband system installed in their county, which it took a larger voice to put enough pressure. Now we kind of incubated the idea, and then one of the broadband companies took it over and ran with it, but it took a little bit of pushing and preparation work for that to happen. And so that's really some of the value that happens with these projects, is sometimes the incubation of an idea to get it to a point that a private company can take it on and move it forward. So,
and thank you for that, Casey. In that particular instance, there was some federal money that was able to be accessed for that, and then private money was put with that, and the project had died, and we were involved, and we were able to. That project would not have happened, and now there's it's a multi-million-dollar project of being able to provide broadband to an area that wouldn't have happened. There's a bridge up there in Daggett County that again we were involved in and helped to bring that about. Some broadband down in San Juan County that we've been involved in. Really, UEN and others have been able to do it, but I think sometimes just uniting and bringing that other extra support to it is enough to help bring some of these over the top a bit. So,
any other questions?
Not really a question, but again, want to share our thanks and our appreciation too, because it, as you know, being from a rural county, trying to get the attention of those folks upstate is tough. So banding together, we've got some good things, some good projects coming, and very excited about it. So appreciate your efforts and your support.
Well, and thank you, and we really appreciate Carbon County. You guys provide a lot of leadership, and under your leadership, I see a lot of good economic activity happening in your county.
Mike, could you just briefly tell everybody how that 7-County Coalition, how it's organized, who's on it, or just...
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. So the 7-County is made up of a board. It's the governing board. There is one commissioner from each of the 7 counties that make up the governing board. Casey, in this case, is on the board representing Carbon County, and I know he's visiting with you guys, and so it brings that voice that you have to the 7-County Coalition. And I will tell you, I'm going to brag on Casey here for a minute, and all of you guys, because there's some things that you've had a very strong voice on that has, that's that's brought back, you know, some things that you wanted to have happen. And so that board is made up of a commissioner from each county.
Thank you.
And that is the governing board. So I don't do what they say. I don't have a job, so.
You do a great job. Mike does a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that between meetings things are getting done, agreements are getting looked at, and different things are happening. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here in your commission meeting and be here in your county today. And this is a wonderful, beautiful area. It really is. You guys do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Commissioners, item number 1 on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes from March 20th, 2019. I didn't see any corrections.
I had one, I think, a correction on item 8, the very last paragraph. On the motion to approve the interlocal agreement with Emery County, I think the intent of that agreement was for the whole county. Some cities would participate, so removing the unincorporated sections is probably more accurate. And that's the only thing I had.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
So I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes from March 20th.
We have a motion.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 2, open sealed bid for weed mosquito abatement chemicals.
We received 3 bids. This first one is from IFA, and the final amount here is $3,288. That's local IFA. This one says it's from John Paul Culligan out of Pocatello, Idaho. It gives individual pricing, but not a total. I'll have to pull out a calculator for that one. And this one's from Adapco out of Florida, it looks like. And let me see if they have a total. They have individual pricing here, but I don't see a total amount here, so I'll have to total these up and then give you a total price on these.
Christian, in the past we've been able to award these on an individual
Per chemical
per
basis.
chemical basis,
That's right.
depending on who was the lowest bid out of each one of those. Was that still the case, Chris, with
That's what we put on the bid sheet. The individual will go through. I usually what I do is once a day, look at these, I put a spreadsheet together. And I highlight which chemicals are the lowest.
okay,
And that's what we put on per chemical.
okay.
Probably don't really use it total.
Question, if I could, how many different individual chemicals do you choose? Are there a couple, 2 or 3, or are we talking a dozen?
Yeah, we're talking, some of them, like Adapto, just mosquito only. And the other, I'm not sure what the other one is, but IFA is only for weed. So there's different chemicals that we buy for mosquito, and different chemicals we buy for weed. And there are several chemicals.
I don't have any questions. I'd make the recommendation that we acknowledge the 3 bids and allow for Chris Rowley, our weed and mosquito supervisor, to work with. I can even work with you or with Seth, and just follow the normal purchasing policies that are in place and purchase those chemicals.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 3, consideration and possible appointment to the Housing Authority Board. Commissioners, after our last meeting, we had 1 application come in for the Housing Authority Board. This was after the fact. We had already made the decision in that meeting that we could appoint whoever, we could find somebody and appoint somebody. So we do have 1 application that arrived after. Do you have any other possible people to fill that vacancy?
I don't.
I don't either.
Okay, do we want to take action on the person that put in an application is Jack Riddle.
Go ahead.
Commissioners, I'd move that we would accept the application from Jack Riddle and appoint him to the Housing Board.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item number 4, consideration and possible approval of fiscal year 2020 Community Impact Board list. Commissioners, this is a list that's put together with all of the cities as well as the 7 County Infrastructure Coalition. And the county works through the Carbon County Municipal Building Authority. We sat down as cities and county and ranked the priority list for the projects in our area, and this is the rankings that were presented.
So the public doesn't know what's on that list, right?
Okay.
I mean, I think it might be a good idea just to highlight. I don't know how many items are on it, and maybe you don't have time to go through each one, but maybe the top priorities.
There's 12. Item number 1, or the number 1 ranked, was Wellington City Sewer Improvement Systems. Should I read in the amounts for those as well?
Sure.
It's a $7 million project. $3,842,918 will be grant from the CIB, and Department of Water Quality will put in a grant of $3,500,000. Number 2 on the list was Price City. They had 300 East and 700 East water and road improvements. That's a $1.7 million ask, $700,000 from local as match, and $1 million from the CIB. Item number 3 was from the Carbon County Municipal Building Authority. This is for public safety radio infrastructure phase 1. As the state moves, just as a little bit of information, as the state moves towards a digital radio infrastructure, the county will need to upgrade its radio system to digital, and this is part of that. So our system will talk to the state system. That's a $1.9 million ask, $100,000 from local, $1.8 million from in grant or loan from the CIB. Wellington is number 4 on the list for a fire truck at $500,000. They have $50,000 that the county has promised them from a prior ask, and $450,000 grant. Now, as we read these in, the CIB has the option to change how much grant, loan, or if they will even grant all of that money. So it may change as these go forward to the CIB, the Community Impact Board. Number 5 is the Helper City water tanks. It's $1 million ask, $250,000 from local, and CIB for $750,000. East Carbon City has culinary water treatment plant improvements of $860,000, and that one isn't split out. It's probably a mix of CIB and some other funding. Helper City has a bridge repair for number 7 at $1 million, $800,000 from CIB and $200,000 from local. The Carbon County Municipal Building Authority and the 7 County Infrastructure Coalition has a project for Ridge Road improvements. That's a $20 million ask, $19 million, $400,000 from other, and $600,000 from the CIB. The $19,400 is in the form we're going to reapply for the build grant. That's a federal grant specifically for infrastructure projects. We put in last year but did not receive any funding. There was only one project in the state that received any funding last year. Number 9 on the list is Wellington City for cemetery improvements. That's a $150,000 ask from the CIB. Helper City is number 10. Main Park Playground Pavilion, $400,000. CIB for $300,000 in grant or loan, with local match of $100,000. Number 11 was the Wellington City water system improvements, and that's a $7,721,312 ask. CIB for $5,971,312, with Department of Division of Drinking Water for $1.75 million, or $1,750,000. And that's all there is a Price City in at number 12 for library ADA improvements at $35,000. So those are the projects on the current 2020 list. The priority list. There is another list, but in the interest of time, we'll move on. So if you're okay with that, we could approve that.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think it's just the CIB's asked us to prioritize as a county what we do, so I'll make the motion we accept this priority list for the CIB for fiscal year 2020.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I guess one thing to note is just because it appears on this list doesn't mean that the project is going to go forward. Each of the entities will be responsible for moving those to the CIB. It's just we have to keep a ranking list. So if the project does receive funding, the entity, whoever it is, has enough funding, they can move their project forward because it's already on the list. Item number 5 on the agenda, consideration and possible approval for Shelley Wright's certified assurance form for the VOCA grant. Shelley.
Thank you. So this is my second round of applying for VOCA funds. And VOCA, it's for a 2-year contract this time. And however, the contract is broken up into 2 budget years. So there's a year 1 and a year 2. And I believe we submitted both budgets for year 1 and year 2. But what this certified electronic signature is allows me to sign off on the grant information, the paperwork, and everything that goes into sending the application. And that's kind of the purpose of the electronic signature.
Can you give a little bit of information of what the for the public, or what the VOCA grant is and what it helps you to do?
The VOCA grant is funding for Victims of Crime Act. It is actually federal funding, so it comes from the feds, and then it's distributed to each state nationwide, and then each state creates a sub-grant process. And so what we're using our VOCA funding for is to have a full-time therapist to serve our child victims of abuse, where these victims don't have medical insurance, or they may be on Medicaid. We were also going to serve adult victims of child abuse who never received treatment. And so, I mean, right now we fund the position at 10 hours a week, and it's just skyrocketed. We are doing so well with the position, great outcomes, very successful. Prior to receiving VOCA funds last year, we had children, there was 36 children that we had to refer that were on Medicaid, and we had to refer out for therapeutic services. We have no way to track them. We don't know if they were successful, if the families even followed through with therapy. Since we started VOCA services in July 1 of 2018, we only had to refer out 13 families or 13 children. And that was because they had a private therapist, or they had medical insurance that would pay for therapy, and they could go somewhere else. So we have seen 12 children since July receiving trauma-focused therapy. So it's much needed in our community. We're able to serve both CJC child victims, children coming in from the Family Support Center, our shelter children coming in who are traumatized, and so it's been very successful. So we want to move that position full-time, and so our current therapist intern is Sandy. She's our CJC coordinator. She will take on that position full-time. So.
No, that's really great. The service that you provide, the people that you work with, it's tremendous service. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You know, being a new guy on the block, so to speak, and learning what you do and seeing what you, the contributions you make for the community, really appreciate that. So,
thank you.
So I'll go ahead and move that we accept these, or give her the approval to pursue the VOCA grant.
Great. Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. And then do you guys have the form? You have it? So we'll just, okay, sounds great. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Item number 6, consideration and possible approval for Dina Fawcett Certified Assurance form for the VOCA grant. Dina.
We're asking for the VOCA grant to be, I get so nervous, I'm sorry. Like,
don't worry, it's just us.
The continuation of our VOCA grant. It is a 2-year grant again. And so I went ahead and I submitted my budget to you for consideration of that to continue it. Everything is the same. We did ask for a little bit of extra supplies that I need. I needed a monitor and a dock for my ThinkPad and a scanner. Those are the new things that I've asked. Everything else is a continuation of my cell phone, and then travel. Everything's the same on the travel. 1 out-of-state training. They approved the grant, and also our quarterly trainings. And And then we asked for 3% raise on each year on the budget, and the grant allows for that, the state. So I was just wanting to know if we can continue that or not, if you guys would approve that.
From past experience, I know you do a great service for our community as well. This is a great opportunity for our community.
Thank you.
How does this one differ from Shelley's?
So my grant, what I do is I serve all victims of crime. What I normally do is I meet with the victim. I attend court with the victim. I help write protective orders, safety planning. Meet with the county attorney for meetings to discuss their case. We get called out on the scene. If there's a rape, we end up going to the hospital with them. We arrive on the scene to help the victims. So we're just with the victims the whole entire time and make sure that they're safe and their rights are taken care of, because they do have rights. We help them prepare to address the court at sentencing time and walk them through that process.
So your grant partly pays for your salary, correct? Or
it does.
payment
My
to
grant actually pays for my salary. There's 52 hours that the county picks up, and that's so that I can do non-VOCA activities. And then the county just pays for my fringe benefit, which is my benefits, and that's the cash match that I have to have.
So we use, even in our office, that's the 52 hours. She does a lot of things for us.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
I'll move that we allow Dina, to pursue the VOCA grant as well.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Dina.
Item number 7, consideration and possible approval of fireworks quote for Energy Days celebration. As Frank comes to the mic here, do you have any questions? Have you had the opportunity to review the Lantis firework presentation or information?
I have. I just, this is just the normal 4th of July fireworks the county provides
yes,
for
we
the
do
community.
this every year. And I sent it to Christian yesterday. Did you have a chance to review it, Christian?
I did, yeah. I looked at the, so this looks like it was just a proposal and not a contract, so I put it in the contract form that we've used annually. I incorporated their proposal into the contract form, so I think if you approve that contract form, we can send it off to Lantis and they will sign it.
Yes.
They're usually pretty good about signing that and following it, and they don't. We've got a form that we've agreed on for probably over 12 years or more.
12 at least, I think.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of fun, that celebration.
So technically, this is not, is the 4th of July going to be called Energy Days?
It is,
Okay.
not Warrior
'Kay.
Days.
So it is Energy Days, and that is the 4th of July, and that's how the contract as written says 4th of July fireworks, so.
Okay.
This is an item that's budgeted
It is budgeted,
in
yes.
this year's.
Yep.
There's no fees in here, no
No hidden
pricing
fees.
here.
It's the contract with Lantis for a $10,000 fireworks display on the 4th of July. And we've done that every year for at least 10, 12 years.
If we approve this, Frank, we promise you won't go and light those fireworks?
Oh,
You'll-
no,
you'll
I'm
stay
not
at a safe
qualified for
distance?
that. I'd like to, but I'm not qualified. Maybe
I know
next
you
year.
would.
Okay, Jeff and I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll make the motion. We approve the contract and get them to come back.
Good. They also do all the fireworks for the Bees games too.
They do a
Great.
good job.
Yeah.
Great. I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just a side note, we have the Women's Expo this Friday and Saturday at the Event Center. If anybody wants to stop by and check that out. Starts at 5 o'clock on Friday and 10 a.m. on Saturday. A lot of fun.
Have you sold all the tickets for the David Archuleta concert? Or
Pretty
Close. There's about 100 left, bleacher seats. And I'm working on a concert for the fair right now, Pam Tillis.
Okay.
Great.
Great.
And that'll be August 9th. I just got to get the contract signed. So,
Great. Thanks, Frank.
thanks.
Thank you, Frank.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Item number 8, consideration and possible approval of implementation of 10% late fee for invoices that are past due for the Carbon County landfill. Seth?
Yeah, so it's relatively new for us to charge the landfill. I say that, but it's been a little over a year now, and we've at times had a struggle getting people to pay, or different companies to pay it at times, and so we've never had a late fee, and we felt like this was appropriate to help us kind of clean up those that you know, they don't have any real incentive to pay us, except for maybe Christian going after them. And so we've worked really hard. We've called pretty much everybody that's delinquent and cleaned that up. We have a little less than 10, I believe, that are still owing, and some of them owe for over 12 months. And so we just feel like this is a good idea to, like I said, help incentivize people to pay on time. And when they don't pay on time, it makes it a little more difficult for us and causes us more work in the office for invoices and late invoices and penalty invoices and whatnot. So pretty simple. We've discussed it with the commissioners, and it'll be fairly simple. 10% late fee after 30 days of the invoice, and then another 10% every 30 days or a month. It's late after that, so it's pretty simple. And we try to not make it too big. We don't want to penalize people unnecessarily, but anyway. So any questions with that?
Commissioners, I just point out you already passed an ordinance allowing you to set a rate and to change that rate. I don't think we need another ordinance or resolution if all you're doing is just changing or modifying the rate that's being collected. If you want me to put that in an ordinance or a resolution, I could do that, but I think simply by you approving that late fee to be tacked on is probably sufficient, just by doing that by motion today.
So the rate would be 10% for each 30 days additional?
Well, 10% per annum, right? Is that what you're thinking?
So how it's structured is, like I said, they'll have the invoice date, and then after 30 days it'll be late, and there'll be a 10% penalty. And then
But is the 10%, is that a per annum 10%?
Every 30 days that it's late, they'll be charged another 10%. Yeah, that's what we discussed. So I guess if you want to change that, you can, but that's what we discussed.
I was just trying to clarify, whatever
No,
rate
that's
you
fine.
set, so.
That's fine.
I mean, that turns out to be 120% per annum, which that's pretty stiff.
Well,
But-
it is if somebody doesn't pay their bill for a year. I mean, that's
That's right.
I think the
That's right.
industry standard in a normal overdue bill is 18% a year. So it's 18, it's broken out, but it's 1.5% per month. So it continues to grow. The 10% per month might be too much, I guess.
yeah.
It wouldn't fit
Right.
normal business practice of late fees, I guess.
So I also consider that most of the people that we have a problem collecting on, it's usually $50 or $100 that they're, so say they're owing $50 the first month, it'd be an extra $5 that they owe. So I think that's why we'd kind of discuss the 10%, but that's up to you whether or not you want to change that. So
You could also say, 18% per annum, but not less than $5 minimum per month or something like that. But I don't have a problem with whatever rate you impose. I mean, that's your decision. But I would agree, that's, in the contracts that I deal with, for the most part, that's more, other than a credit card company, that's really what you're looking at with the construction companies is, I just don't often see more than 18% per annum.
That would be my thoughts about the rate. Would be and I don't know, it's been a few years since I've dealt with it. In your business, how do you handle late fees?
It's pretty much as you explained, the same way. I mean, you could go, in Seth's example, if you went like, say, 2%, on $50, you're talking $1 a month, which I understand that's not much of a burden or incentive to get people to pay. So percentage-wise, that maybe isn't possible. Have you thought about just a dollar amount?
No, I think what Christian suggested was a good idea, not to be less than $5 or whatever per month.
Yeah, and part of this is, and you normally view the amount of loss, where $50 loss to the county is fairly insignificant, but to put a heavy penalty on it, I think may set a pretty high standard for I don't know, just we're sending a pretty hard message by putting it pretty high, I think.
Are these typically, is it more individuals or businesses, or where are we seeing the delinquencies?
Right now, of our list, the majority of them are businesses.
Yeah, and most of those are unable to take anything to the landfill because of the late fee, so they're unable to use the landfill at this point until they take care of the bill.
I believe it's when they're delinquent 90 days, yeah, we cut them off, or the landfill's meant to stop them from dumping.
Yeah.
I would be okay with a percentage or a dollar amount that's lower than 10% on the percentage wise, or a dollar amount of, say, $5 per month. Obviously, we don't want to stifle businesses and have that be a major issue, but also we want them to pay their bills as well.
I think we need to also put a cap on it, kind of like Christian was saying, that whatever the industry standard is 18% per annual?
Per annum.
Annum?
Per year.
Per year, yeah.
Christian, if one of these ended up in court, what do you think would come if we had a very high interest rate?
Well, there is a usury statute out there, and I'm not real familiar with that, so I don't know if there are certain dollar amounts out there that might be that a court would balk at one point. So it's possible. It's possible a court would do that. On the other hand, I think a court would say, you know, everybody else has to pay. you need to pay this. So I think there's some leeway there, but I think there is a point at which a court's going to say that's too much.
Sure,
if you want me to do a little bit more research, we could do that. You know, I could research those usury laws. I think those mostly apply though to loans and not penalties. And if that's the case, then I think a court's just going to say what's unconscionable. You know, if you have if you're doubling the dollar, if you're getting close to half the amount within 6 months. Well, within 6 months, the original fee will be, I mean, you're going to be up to 60%, right? The fine's going to be 60% of the original amount within 6 months. So it's hard for me to say. I could do some research on that. I'm happy to look at it, and we could bring it back next month if you'd like us to be a little more precise.
I'd be comfortable with 18% annum as an interest rate for the unpaid balance, and not change the whatever's in place right now to stop them from bringing additional garbage out if they're late. Is that enough of a motion?
And so that's 90 days. Somebody who was delinquent would be
Well,
asked not to.
I think it's 30 days, right? So typically, along with the industry standard being, you'll start to accrue interest once you're 30 days late. But if you don't pay it within 90 days, then you're barred from dumping.
Yes,
dump.
that's what I want to make clear. So I'll second your motion then, Larry.
We have a motion and a second. Does that apply, just as a clarification, do you want that broken out over the year? Or do you want that applied all at once after 30 days? Or 5% after the first month late? And then, do you know how you want to structure that?
I think the simple way would just, it ends up being 1.5% per month.
Okay. Okay. So just for clarification, that's...
And mostly the language in the small print at the bottom of any invoice, it would talk about an 18% annum for late fees after 30 days. And so, and I don't know if we have them sign something at the landfill when they dump, but the invoice that we send out, that probably ought to be on the bottom of that invoice so it's clear moving forward that that's what the county's going to do, so these people are aware of it when the bill goes to them.
Do you want to have a minimum monthly fee like Christian suggested? If you have someone that says $100 that they owe, it would take them 12 months to owe $18 in late fees. So I don't know if you want a minimum. Just, I think part of it, I understand that we don't want to burden businesses too much, but hopefully this will encourage them to pay on time. I don't know.
Are you thinking, Seth, something like a $10 fee per month or 1.5%, whichever is greater?
Yeah, I think that's what Christian was suggesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but he said like a $5 minimum per month, I think is what he said. So.
It's your decision. Yeah. However you want to do it.
I already made a motion in second, right?
We can change it. I'm okay with that too. I don't.
Well, I'm good. I was just wanted to clarify if it was per annum or how it was to be applied. So if we want to apply 1.5 for the year, I'm good with that.
And I'm still good with that.
And then I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 9, consideration of possible approval of a base agreement between Javiation and Carbon County. Commissioners, I'll let Christian, after I give a brief explanation of what this is. About a month ago, we went through a process to select an airport engineer to help us with our planning and also the execution, execution of projects out at the airport. Javiation was selected, and this is the agreement for any work to be done out there. Anything else to add with that?
Commissioners, you'll just notice they put pricing in there for lump sum. That they'll perform projects on either as a cost plus a fixed fee or on a lump sum basis. And so the lump sum projects will be negotiated, and I'm assuming they will be negotiated by estimating based on total number of hours and whatnot, but neither party's bound to adhere to that. So as those come along, we'll do them as they come, and we can get into nitty-gritty on pricing for each one of those separately. If it's a cost plus a fixed fee amendment, they will charge, looks like 20% for the fixed fee will be 20% of labor costs. And then those labor costs are included in the exhibit to it. So I'm also comfortable with the insurance provisions that they've got in there. They have fairly hefty, I believe, a $2 million aggregate for bodily injury, $1 million for a per occurrence. They also agree to indemnify the county in the event that their own engineering is the cause of a loss or a claim or an injury to anyone. We also agree to indemnify them if we are at fault for anything. So I'm fine with all the provisions in the contract. I don't have any concerns with those. I can tell they're written specifically, they're tailored to incorporate a lot of federal rules and guidelines that are imposed by the FAA. In dealing with J'Aviation, I've come to know that they are very familiar with FAA regulations and federal statutes generally, so I'm not an expert on those, but I've come to find out that they are, and there's a lot of references to a lot of different federal statutes and regulations that they agree to abide by in the implementation of the contract. So I feel like they're on the ball on this. They'll look out for us with respect to those federal requirements that we're required to abide by, which is a great reason to have them, I think, because they're the experts on those. So I feel comfortable with the contract. I think it protects both parties. If you're comfortable with the rates, I'm not really sure what industry standards are, but it is a specialized field of engineering, and the rates are on the table there in Exhibit B. And I'm fine with the contract unless you have any questions or concerns.
I have no questions.
Yeah, I have no questions either.
I make the motion we accept this agreement between J'Aviation Incorporated and Carbon County for our engineering help at the airport.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 10, consideration of possible approval of a cooperative forest road agreement with U.S. Forest Service. I'm not sure who has this on the agenda. It looks like the same agreements that we've had in the past. It's the maintenance of, there was 11.
It's on the first page.
First page.
Yeah.
Some Forest Service roads where the county and the Forest Service agreed to help maintain certain roads. Starvation Spring, Boarding House Canyon, Bob Wright Canyon, Wiregrass Bench, Monument Peak, Corner Canyon, Nuck Woodward, Gentry Mountain, Fish Creek Ridge, Fish Creek Campground, Granger Ridge, Green Canyon, Mud Creek, Star Point, unnamed Second Water, Wife's Canyon, unnamed Finn Canyon, another unnamed, and Bob Wright Canyon.
By way of a little explanation, the Forest Service and the county in the past have agreed to split some of these roads up so that they're not all, the county doesn't have to go out on every road and grade our section of the road, and then the Forest Service go out on every part of their same road that extends into the forest. And so they kind of work together and split those roads up, and our road crews end up doing our county road plus going into the forest area in parts of these roads, and so they kind of split those up that way. And I think it's a good agreement.
I agree.
I'll make a motion that we approve the cooperative forest road agreement with the U.S. Forest Service.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 11, consideration of possible approval of a master service agreement for general services for 2019 with Jones and DeMille. I don't know, Jones and DeMille is present. I don't know if they want to speak to this or if Christian wants to speak to this.
Just to be clear, it looks like this is just a 2019 general materials testing and observation agreement. Is that correct, guys? In other words, that's all this assignment order is to cover, right?
Yes, but there's actually another one that's been developing in the last 2 weeks, so
We don't have that yet, do we?
it's in Todd's inbox right now.
Okay, but I mean,
We'll
it's
need to do
not
that.
part of the, it wasn't intended to be put on the agenda. Or it didn't make it
No.
if it did.
No, so
It
let me
was supposed
kind of
to.
explain, I guess, what it is.
Okay,
We have a general services agreement. What this assignment order is for is specifically, we've got, it's basically a request from the county for engineering services that we do provide. It's usually an annual contract. These are just small task projects that are, I don't even know a dollar amount, less than $5,000 per task. So the one that I think that we had originally had on your table would be for general material testing services. If you're a project last year, we did a few density tests on some road construction. We pulled some asphalt samples, some cores on some county projects or roads that the county had, and so that's what this contract is for. It'll just, and it's those are just based on hourly rates, which that has been provided. And then there's also, we're working on another one right now that will be, what's the word, hydraulic analysis reviews. So as Todd Thorne has hydraulic analysis reviews that have to be done because of changes that are in the floodplain, the FEMA floodplains. They have to have a review done to make sure that whatever construction is being done is in there. As we were starting to do that, rather than putting it under the material testing one, I think we want to create its own. And so you'll be seeing that maybe in the next couple of days, maybe consider that one. We provided a flat rate fee per review on that based on a single dwelling type home. The hourly rates would apply if it becomes a larger scale, but that would be determined on an as-needed basis again. So that's what the two general service agreements, or the assignment orders are for those general service agreements.
so I think we can only approve the one
Approve the one.
tonight that's actually on the agenda. But we can approve that one tonight.
And I do have a question just for clarification. On this list here, it does say from January 1 of 2018. So these are the same rates from last year?
Let me double check. The new one that had been sent out. That's what I'm showing on this one, correct. That's the latest revisions, so.
Okay.
I have no questions.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I'll make the motion that we enter into this engineering service agreement with Jones and DeMille for odd incidents that we need help with in testing.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Item number 12, public hearing on a change to the Carbon County zoning map from C2 to RR1 on parcel 2-347-9 at 4877 North, Highway 6 for Ed and Wilma Howa. Todd, do you want to take this one? Sorry.
Yep. So, and Ed's here to answer any questions if we need them. So, Mr. Howe is looking to zone change his property, which is currently in a C1 zone. It's just south of wastewater logistics on Highway 6. So what he's looking to do is to zone change it to an RR1 in order to eventually do a subdivision to allow another home so that his mother-in-law could move into it. Because right now you can't have two dwellings on the same lot. So that's what he's looking at doing for the zone change, so he can be able to do that.
Okay. Do we have any other questions before we move into the public hearing?
I don't have any questions.
No.
With no other questions, we'll move into the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak to this, please come to the mic, state your name for the record, and state your concerns. We'll open this public hearing at 5:32. Looks like this is going to be a tough one. Seeing nobody anxiously trying to get to the mic, we'll close this at 5:33. Item number 13, review and possible adoption of ordinance number 512, a change to the Carbon County zoning map from C2 to RR1 on parcel 2-347-9 at 4877 North Highway 6 for Ed and Wilma Howa.
I have no questions.
I have none either, so I'll make a motion that we adopt the ordinance 512 to change the county zoning map from C2 to RR1 on parcel 2-347-9 at 4877 North Highway 6 for Ed and Wilma Howa.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Yeah, I got stuck in the middle of it.
Thanks,
Twice.
Ed.
There's a speed bump on it.
Item number 14, public hearing to consider amendments to the Carbon County Development Code, Section 1, Title, Intent, Purpose, and Interpretation, Section 2, County Planning, Section 4, Zoning and Regulations, Section 9, Definitions, and Section 10, Administration and Enforcement Violation Penalty. Again, anyone wanting to speak to this? Before we get into that, Todd, do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, I'll give a just a brief overview of the updates that were done for those applicable sections. So myself and Doris and the Planning Commission have went through and updated sections 1, 2, 4, 9, and 10. Most of the updates are minor ones, just state code references, editing, formatting, and things like that. The bulk of the changes are in Section 4. That's the zoning regulations that allow things that are either permitted, not allowed, or conditionally allowed. So just as an overview, with Section 1, it was just a state code update. Section 2, we made it consistent with the rest of the code by eliminating the site plan review committee that reviewed subdivisions where 3 or less. We thought it was redundant, so now Planning Commission reviews all of that, and we're just making it consistent with all the other zones that we've done. Section 4, this is where the bulk of it is. What I call major changes that allow things that are permitted or not permitted. One of the big changes is deleting as a permitted use the raising, care, and keeping of animals in the R112 zone, R18, R28, and R48, which are the smaller lots, 8,000 square foot lots, and to change it so large animals such as pigs, horses, and cows can't be kept on those properties. So there has been some concern with that in some of our higher density areas, those farm animals. So anything that's a platted subdivision or like a town site, it's zoned in those zones would no longer be allowed. If it's an existing use, it'd be what's called a legal non-conforming use, and they can continue that use, but no new uses of farm animals. Another one is deleting kennels as a permitted use in the R120 zone. Most all of our new development is an R120 zone, which is a half acre. So if you're going to have a kennel, you need to have more property and away from some of the other development. Added single-family dwellings is a permitted use in the watershed and mountain range. We have standards how you have to build a cabin. So as long as they follow those standards, they can have, it'll be a permitted use. Allow the land use authority to determine the minimum acreage in the commercial and industrial zones. This right now, a commercial zone is 3 acres, industrial zones are 5 acres. Depending on the business, they might not need 3 or 5 acres. So if they have reason to reduce that size based off of their site plan, the planning commission could recommend a smaller lot size. We added sexually oriented businesses as a conditional use in the I-1 zone. Same with smoke shops in the I-1 zone, because currently we don't have those listed as any type of a use. So theoretically, they could go in any zone. So we want to make sure we have parameters where a sexually oriented business or smoke shop could go as a conditional use in an I zone. The one thing Christian and I added in between Planning Commission and today, in the I-1 and 2 zones, it talks about manufacturing, compounding, processing goods and materials. We changed that to a conditional use instead of a permitted use. So that all has to go through Planning Commission. Then the last two, Section 9, definitions. We added a whole bunch of new definitions. We clarified one that talks about a truck terminal, that it's also for the dispatching of trucks, not just goods and services. The last section, Section 10, just change the penalty for a violation of the zoning code to a Class B misdemeanor instead of an infraction. That's the way it is in the building code, and other parts of the code is their Class B, so we just made it consistent. So that's a year's worth of work in a couple minutes summarized.
Todd, too, just for the record, in the definition portion, I'm assuming, did you address the Airbnbs and the newer things that are coming on?
So we define it as short-term rental, and we have a definition for short-term rentals.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, we'll open up this public hearing at 5:39. Anyone that would like to speak to this, please come to the mic, state your name for the record, and express your concerns. Hi, Lena.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are
My
you?
name is Linda Topolovic. Thanks, guys, for making a lot of those changes that we discussed. I hadn't seen in my copy of this Section 9 that trucks, dispatching of trucks was included. So, but you have included it in your version, so that's good. There were just a couple other things anyway. Section 4, under the residential zones, at least in the copy that I have, pet cemeteries are not marked with, for family pets, are not marked with permitted, conditioned, or not permitted. Under the industrial, both zones, churches are in the same state, they're not marked as permitted, conditioned, or neither. Within the industrial zone, if you look at land use number 65, it has a pointer to 3.3.32, and in reading through 3.3.32, it would be good if we could maybe add a number 12 for location of springs, streams, rivers, waterways, secondary water lines, and secondary water, I guess, canals for the site plan review, if that's at all possible. Excuse me.
So explain that in context.
The reason being is, as you're looking at the site plan itself for, say, like a truck terminal or a business or whatever, it would be good to know where the waterways are, where the secondary water lines are in your other water. Okay, in Chapter 2 on Section 215, line 55, it says, any use of land that is not enumerated as a permitted or conditional use in a particular zoning district and is not contrary to law may be considered by the Planning Commission to be a permitted, non-conditional, or conditional use. The Planning Commission shall hear and decide requests from any person or entity adversely affected by an omission of the legal land use in this code. The Planning Commission shall determine whether the use is permitted or conditional. I think this allows for changes to this ordinance for uses by the Planning Commission without any input from the public. it doesn't allow for an option of not allowed. And so I would suggest that maybe we change line number 59 to add or not permitted at the end of it. And then also suggest that maybe on line 63 that we add and also meet the legislative intent of a particular zoning district. Because if somebody comes in and they're in a residential zone and they say, okay, I want a business, I want this business in there. What this is saying, to me anyway, is that the planning commission now has to treat that, because it's not in the code anywhere for that zone. You have to treat that as either a permitted or a conditioned, you know, with conditions, or a permitted use. So how do we restrict that? I don't know. And maybe it's covered by the word, you know, by the law, but I don't think it is. And so I think somehow we need to maybe add to 63, also meet the legislative intent of a particular zoning district.
So I know as a general principle, if there's a land use that's legal, the legislature and especially the courts say if a land use is legal and its detrimental effects can be mitigated, you're supposed to find a place for it. So in other words, if it's a legal use and we've just neglected to put that, enumerate that legal use in our code, it's likely that if it were declined by the planning commission, a court would overturn that and say, you guys should have approved this because it was a legal use. Just not enumerating it is not a good enough reason to not permit it.
But if you don't identify it in residential, but you identify it in commercial, say, or industrial, then they can't really come back and say you don't have it in residential, so you've got to put it in there, right?
Yeah. In other words, I think if you're saying provided it's a use that's consistent with the legislative intent of that particular zone, right?
Right.
I think that's. Yeah, I think a court would look at that much more favorably than just saying it's forbidden because you didn't list it. So that is a good point.
Okay, and I think that's the only other concern I would have too is in the watershed areas if we're allowing residences without, especially with our watershed because we only have one water source, that we don't have, you know, sufficient concerns about septic systems, that there's any kind of leaks or that kind of thing into our watershed. So with residences. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak to this? Seeing no one else wanting to come speak to this, we'll close the hearing at 5:45.
I'll make one more comment on that last exchange that I had with Ms. Topolovic.
Absolutely.
So as I read further down in section E, it does say the planning commission may not hear or authorize such use. This is in 2.1, that section E. Planning commission may not hear or authorize such use unless it meets the minimum requirements needed to promote the public health, safety, morals, convenience, order, prosperity, and general welfare of the public. Planning commission, upon the planning commission making findings of fact, any conditional use shall be approved pursuant to the standards set forth in this code. So I guess I would say it does seem like that legislative intent. In other words, I think that would be sufficient grounds for a planning commission to say, I'm not going to put this unique commercial use in a residential section because it has to meet the minimum requirements for that section. So if we were going to amend it, I would maybe say meets the minimum requirements of a particular zone as set forth in the zone common needed to promote the public health. I mean, I guess my point is I think it's already in there, but I would say if we were going to make a change, we'd just say we'll meet the minimum requirements of the particular zone for which the requested use is requested. I don't know if Todd has other thoughts on that, but I think Todd feels like it's sufficient as it is. But I wouldn't be averse to, if you decided to say meets the particular minimum requirements within a particular zone. Does that make sense? Are you following what I'm saying, or am I? In other words, I think that's what Lynn is saying is, just because it's not listed doesn't mean you can then go put a commercial use in a, and frankly, I don't think that's allowed already. This language is already, this is language that's not being changed. I think that language has long been there as it is. So.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I don't have any questions. I just wonder, with the comments that Lena has put out, Todd and Christian, other than what you've already talked about, are there concerns that we need to put things on hold and reevaluate something with those few areas she commented on?
Can we take those one by one for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so I wrote down, and Lena, correct me if I'm.
Do we need to open this back up, or?
No, I think
okay?
I think the public hearing's over, but we can keep moving.
Right, I think we can have discussion, and I think it's okay for Lena to participate in that if I have a question without having to open up the public hearing.
Okay.
So the first one, section 4 with respect to pet cemeteries. What I didn't catch what the concern was there.
So, and I see what Lena's saying. There's a couple, and it's going to be hard to see. All the uses are either P for permitted, C for conditional, or N for not allowed. There's a couple of spots where pet cemeteries for family pets weren't marked as the letter P. So I can go through and add as permitted. In the R 2.5 zone, I missed it. And the other zones, and there's one other one I missed it in the RR5 zone. So there's a couple zones that I skipped over that one. So every other zone was listed as permitted, just a couple that for some reason were missed.
So your intent was to have it as a permitted use?
As a permitted use.
In each of those?
In each and every zone?
Yes. If in a residential lot, if someone's dog dies, they can bury it in their backyard.
But do you want that to happen in industrial and commercial?
If it's, I believe, let's pull up that. So, we don't have pet cemeteries listed in the in the commercial industrial zones because residential homes aren't in there. So I just double checked, but there's no pet cemeteries in those ones.
Okay.
So your intent would be to go into those places you've left it out and add it?
Yep.
So for this item, that's okay.
Then
sounds fine to me.
I'm good with that.
I am as well.
Okay.
And then the next concern that I wrote down was churches in industrial zones. Lena, why don't you come back up here so I can just ask you, because I want to make sure I'm.
Yeah, that one was missed also.
Same deal. That was just
Yep.
So,
I think I'm okay with that change as well. If it was just
to clarify, the request, your concern was that it should be marked as either permitted or conditional, one of those.
Correct.
And Todd, your intent was that it be a permitted use.
Be a permitted use in those zones. They're permitted in every other zone, so I don't think if someone chose to build a church in a commercial zone, I wouldn't see a concern why they need a conditional use, because everywhere else it's permitted.
okay.
I see.
I'm good with that.
I'm good too with that.
I am as well.
Next concern I saw was in section 3.3.2, Lena requested that there be an addition of some language. Is that right? Was it 3.3.32? 3.3.32.
Correct.
And that a site plan should indicate the location of streams, springs, secondary waterways, that kind of thing. So we're in, so we're not in section 4, but 3.2, right?
3.3.2 isn't for a public hearing. There's a reference in one of, somewhere that 3.
There's reference in,
Yes,
from 4
from
to 3.
4?
Yeah.
Where in 4? 'Cause that's where I missed.
Within the industrial land use,
Industrial.
an example is number 65.
65, okay,
It,
that's.
within the industrial zone, it has a pointer to 3.3.2. And I think within if you're putting together an industrial zone, you would want to know where the waterways are and stuff like that.
So that's not one we could fix today, but we can make a note for a few, because section 3 is not before us. But I'm going to make a note that when we look at section 3 again, that's something we could include.
Okay.
So that's included in site plan.
Okay, I didn't
reviews.
know if we could do it through this 4 or not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but it's a good note for us to discuss, I think.
Okay.
Good enough.
And then let's see, the only other one was that section 2.1, right? Where we had,
Right.
we wanted to make sure that uses were only considered within zones that would be appropriate.
Yeah, and
more or less.
to add, and also meet the legislative intent of a particular zoning district, of the particular zoning district that you're doing it.
Do you have that section in front of you, commissioners?
I don't.
Would it be helpful to see that? Or do you know how you want to proceed on that? Might be, I think you might want to just look at this just to decide how you
Okay.
want to proceed with that part.
And also or not permitted at all, so they have a choice between permit it, don't permit it. type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
If a permitted use if something comes in that's not listed as permitted, that we follow that in addition to the legislative intent of the code, so it clarifies it. So just add that verbiage to the end of that sentence.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Overall, I think it states that, but to clarify it,
Sure.
And I don't think you need to say that it could be, well, I don't think we should say it can be denied outright unless mitigation cannot take place, as we've already got those standards elsewhere in the code. And I think because it does say a use that's not contrary to law, really if a legal use comes in and it's compatible with the zone and mitigating effects can be put in place, I don't think we should grant the discretion to deny the use if it's legal. So really, it should only be an illegal use that should be not given a chance to be permitted. There's always going to be something that's a legal use but that wasn't enumerated. And so I don't want to give the Planning Commission the right to deny it simply because it's not enumerated. Is my recommendation.
So does that language that Todd has showed us, does that take care of it in your mind?
Well, I think if we add that little bit to it, it
Okay.
says in that particular section, yes.
Okay, we've kind of addressed most of we have addressed those issues that were brought forward, which brings us to item number 15, review and possible adoption of ordinance number 513, amending sections 1, 2, 4, 9, and 10 of the Carbon County Development Code.
If there's no further questions, I'll make the motion that we adopt these development code changes to section 1, 2, 4, 9, and 10 with the changes that we've just talked about. Thank you, Lena, for bringing them up.
We have a motion.
And I will second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Commissioners, that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'll accept a motion.
I'll motion that we adjourn.
We are adjourned. Please drive safe and remember to buckle up.